I lost my hearing for 5 years. When I finally got it back, I chose not to tell my family right away. Thank God I did. The very next day, what I heard was terrible. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Blanche, and I'm 67 years old. 5 years ago, I lost my hearing in what everyone called a freak accident. I was cleaning Harold's study when the old wooden ladder gave way beneath me. The fall wasn't what took my hearing. It was the way my head struck the corner of his mahogany desk. The doctor said the trauma damaged something delicate in my inner ear, something that couldn't be fixed. Or so we all believed. Harold, my husband of 42 years, became my voice to the world. Stuart, our only son, visited more frequently at first, though his wife Esme always seemed irritated by the extra attention I required. I learned to read lips, to communicate through writing, to navigate a world that had suddenly gone silent. The hardest part wasn't the silence itself. It was watching my family's patience slowly erode. Esme would stand behind me sometimes, her lips moving rapidly in what I assumed were complaints to Stuart. I couldn't read her words from that angle, but her body language spoke volumes. Arms crossed, head shaking, eyes rolling. Stuart would nod along, his shoulders sagging with what looked like resignation. Harold never lost patience with me. Even when his own health began failing 2 years ago, he would sit beside me for hours, writing notes back and forth, making sure I felt included in conversations. When visitors came, he would repeat everything they said, his weathered hands moving slowly as he wrote their words for me to see. 3 months ago, my world changed again. I'd been experiencing strange sensations in my ears, tiny pops and pressures that I hadn't felt since the accident. During a routine doctor's visit, my physician noticed something unusual and referred me to a specialist. After extensive testing, Dr. Morrison delivered news that should have been wonderful. A new surgical procedure had been developed that could potentially restore my hearing. The surgery was experimental, expensive, and came with no guarantees. Harold and I decided to try it anyway. What did we have to lose? 2 weeks after the procedure, sitting in our garden on a Tuesday morning, I heard it, the sound of birds singing, soft at first, like a distant memory, then clearer and clearer, until tears streamed down my face. I could hear again, but something made me hesitate before sharing this miracle with my family. Maybe it was the way Esme had been looking at me lately, or how Stuart's visits had become shorter and more perfunctory. I decided to wait, to observe, to understand what my 5 years of silence might have revealed about the people I loved most. Harold died 3 weeks later, a heart attack in his sleep, peaceful and sudden. I was devastated, but also grateful that he'd lived to see my hearing restored, even if only I knew about it. The funeral was yesterday, Holy Cross Cemetery, where Harold had chosen a plot beside his parents. The service was beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke about Harold's kindness, his devotion to family, his 40 years as a pharmacist serving our community. I sat in the front row, Stuart on one side, Esme on the other, playing the part of the grieving deaf widow. But I could hear everything. During the service, I heard the whispered conversations behind me. Old friends sharing memories of Harold, neighbors expressing sympathy for my loss. But I also heard something else. Esme's voice, low and urgent, speaking to her friend Margaret during the closing hymn. "Thank God this is finally over," she whispered. "Stuart's been worried sick about what to do with her. She can't live alone, obviously, and Harold spoiled her rotten. She doesn't understand that things are going to be different now." My blood ran cold, but I kept my expression neutral, my eyes fixed on Harold's casket. Margaret whispered back, "What will you do with her?" "Oh, we have it all figured out," Esme replied, her voice carrying that satisfied tone I'd learned to recognize even without hearing it. "Harold left everything to Stuart, of course. Who else would he leave it to? She can't manage money or property in her condition. We'll find her a nice facility somewhere, sell the house, and finally start our real life together." The hymn ended, and people began filing out. I sat frozen, processing what I'd just heard. Esme believed Harold had left everything to Stuart. She was already making plans to institutionalize me and sell my home. At the graveside, as dirt fell onto Harold's casket, I listened to more conversations. Stuart's voice, uncertain and guilty. Mom seems so lost. Maybe we should wait before making any big decisions. Esme's response was sharp. She'll adjust. She has to. We can't put our lives on hold forever, Stuart. Your father understood that. Why do you think he arranged things the way he did? After the burial, people gathered at our house, my house, though Esme clearly didn't see it that way. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, accepting condolences I could now hear clearly. Most people spoke directly to Stuart or Esme, as if my deafness made me invisible, but I was listening to everything. In the kitchen, while I sat at the table looking appropriately vacant, Esme spoke to her sister on the phone. No, she doesn't suspect anything. How could she? She can barely function on her own. Stuart feels guilty, but he knows I'm right. The woman can't even hear a smoke alarm. What if there's a fire? What if she falls again? We'd be liable. Her sister's voice was too quiet for me to catch, but Esme's response chilled me. Of course we'll be respectful about it. We're not monsters. But Harold's gone now, and somebody has to make the practical decisions. She certainly can't. As the last guest left, I retreated to my bedroom, claiming exhaustion. But I could hear Stuart and Esme in the living room below, their voices carrying up through the old house's thin floors. I still think we should give it more time, Stuart was saying. She's grieving. We're all grieving. Time won't change the facts, Esme replied. She's 67, deaf, and alone. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be for everyone. Your father knew this day would come. That's why he made sure you'd inherit everything. But what if she doesn't want to leave the house? Esme's laugh was cold. Want? Stuart, she can't even hear what we're saying right now. She'll go where we tell her to go, and she'll be grateful for it. Trust me, within a month she'll wonder why she ever thought she could manage on her own. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. They truly believed Harold had left everything to Stuart. They were already planning my future without my consent, treating me like a burden to be managed, rather than a person with rights and choices. But there was something they didn't know, something only Harold and I knew. The will they were counting on wasn't the real one. The morning after Harold's funeral, I woke to the sound of Esme's voice in my kitchen. She was on the phone again, her tone brisk and businesslike. Yes, I understand the process takes time, but we need to move quickly. She's not getting any younger, and frankly, she's becoming more confused every day. I crept to the top of the stairs, careful to avoid the creaky floorboard that had betrayed many midnight trips over the years. From there, I could see into the kitchen where Esme sat at my table, a notepad in front of her, completely at ease in what she clearly considered her new domain. Assisted living would be ideal, she continued, but honestly, she might need more care than that. She doesn't respond when people talk to her, seems lost most of the time. I'm worried about her mental state on top of the hearing loss. My hands gripped the banister. She was describing me as if I were senile, painting a picture of a woman too incompetent to make her own decisions. Stuart? Oh, he agrees completely. He's just emotional right now. You know how men get when they lose their fathers. But he knows I'm right. Someone has to think practically about these things. The person on the other end must have asked a question because Esme's voice grew sharper. Of course she'll resist at first. They always do. But she doesn't really have a choice, does she? Harold left everything to Stuart precisely because he knew she couldn't handle the responsibility. The man spent 42 years watching her depend on him for everything. He wasn't going to burden her with financial decisions in her condition. I had to press my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. The lies came so easily to her, delivered with such conviction that anyone listening would believe she was describing a helpless invalid, rather than a woman who had managed their household finances for decades, while Harold focused on his pharmacy. Stuart's voice joined the conversation as he entered the kitchen. Any word from the lawyer about when we can start going through Dad's papers? Mr. Peterson said we should wait until after the reading of the will, Esme replied. But that's just a formality. Your father made his intentions very clear. I still feel weird about this, Stuart admitted. Maybe we should talk to Mom first. Explain what we're thinking. Esme's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Explain to her? Stuart, she can't hear us. And even if she could, do you really think she'd understand the complexity of estate management? Property taxes, investments, maintenance costs? She's been sheltered from all of that her entire adult life. She's not stupid, Esme. I never said she was stupid, but she's dependent, and dependency becomes more pronounced with age and disability. Your father knew that. Why do you think he never taught her about the finances? He was protecting her from responsibilities she couldn't handle. I wanted to scream. Harold had tried to teach me about our investments, had insisted I be involved in major financial decisions. I was the one who had managed our household budget, who had negotiated with contractors, who had researched and chosen our insurance policies, but apparently Esme had never bothered to notice any of that. Besides, she continued, what kind of life would she have rattling around in this big house all alone? She'd be isolated, vulnerable. At Sunset Manor, she'd have company, activities, professional care. She'd probably be happier. Sunset Manor. I knew that place. A grim facility on the outskirts of town where families deposited elderly relatives they couldn't be bothered to visit. The rooms were tiny, the food was terrible, and the staff was overworked and underpaid. I'd driven past it countless times, always feeling sorry for the residents sitting by the windows, looking out at a world that had moved on without them. And the house? Stuart asked. Would sell quickly in this market. This neighborhood is very desirable now. We could probably get enough to cover her care for years and still have a substantial amount left over. Left over. As if my needs were just an inconvenience to be calculated and minimized. I heard Stuart sigh heavily. I just wish Dad had talked to me about all this before he died. Oh, sweetheart, he tried. You just weren't ready to hear it. Remember last Christmas when he pulled you aside? He was worried about what would happen to your mother if something happened to him. He knew you'd need to make difficult decisions. That was a lie. Last Christmas, Harold had pulled Stuart aside to ask him to be more patient with me, to understand that my hearing loss made social situations difficult. He'd never mentioned anything about institutionalizing me or taking over my affairs. But Stuart wouldn't remember it that way now. Grief had a way of reshaping memories, and Esme was an expert at subtle manipulation. The important thing, Esme continued, is that we're doing what's best for everyone. Your mother will be safe and cared for. We can finally start our own family without worrying about elder care, and your father's legacy will be preserved. Their own family. I hadn't known they were trying to have children, but it explained a lot about Esme's urgency to clear me out of the picture. I suppose you're right, Stuart said finally. It's just, she seems so small and lost without Dad. That's exactly why she needs professional care. Grief affects people differently, especially at her age and with her limitations. We can't be expected to provide round-the-clock supervision. I retreated to my bedroom, my heart pounding with rage and betrayal. They were so confident, so certain of their plan. Stuart genuinely believed he was acting in my best interest, while Esme orchestrated my exile with the skill of a master manipulator. But there was something they didn't know. I walked to my closet and pushed aside the old winter coats to reveal the small safe Harold had installed years ago. My fingers remembered the combination, our wedding date. Inside, beneath some old jewelry and important papers, was a manila envelope marked Last Will and Testament, Harold Matthews, Original. I pulled it out with trembling hands, though I'd read it dozens of times since Harold's death. The real will, the one only Harold and I knew about, told a very different story from the one Esme was so confidently sharing. Harold had indeed updated his will 3 months before his death, right after my hearing surgery, in fact. But instead of leaving everything to Stuart, as Esme assumed, he had left everything to me. The house, the savings accounts, his life insurance, his retirement funds, all of it was mine. More importantly, the will contained specific language Harold had insisted upon. I am of sound mind and have observed that my wife Blanche Matthews remains mentally competent and capable of managing her own affairs despite her hearing impairment. Any attempt to declare her incompetent or to place her in institutional care against her will should be viewed as contrary to my wishes and potentially fraudulent. Harold had suspected something like this might happen. He'd seen how Esme looked at our home, heard her casual comments about how much the house must be worth, noticed her growing impatience with the demands of caring for family. He'd protected me in the only way he could, by making sure I had the legal and financial means to protect myself. The will also contained one more crucial provision. If Stuart challenged the will or attempted to have me declared incompetent, his inheritance would be reduced to a token amount, with the bulk of the estate going to the local hospital's charity fund. Harold had loved our son, but he'd seen through Esme's manipulation. He'd given Stuart a choice: respect his mother's autonomy and inherit a substantial sum, or try to override his father's wishes and lose almost everything. I placed the will back in the safe, my hands steadier now. Let them plan. Let them make their phone calls and research their facilities. Let them count money that would never be theirs. Tomorrow was the formal reading of the will at Mr. Peterson's office. Esme was expecting a formality that would confirm her assumptions and give her legal authority over my life. Instead, she was about to learn that Harold Matthews had been much smarter than she'd ever realized. And I was about to discover just how far my son would go to support his wife's delusions, even when faced with his father's true intentions. The will reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock Wednesday morning at Peterson and Associates. I sat in my bedroom, staring at my reflection in Harold's old shaving mirror, preparing for the performance of my lifetime. Today, I would continue playing the deaf, helpless widow while watching my family's true nature reveal itself. I chose my outfit carefully: Harold's favorite blue dress, the one that made me look smaller and more fragile than I actually was, a touch of powder to pale my complexion, and I was ready to play the part they expected. Stuart arrived at 9:30 to drive me to the lawyer's office. I could hear him and Esme talking in the kitchen before he came upstairs to get me. "Remember what we discussed?" Esme was saying. "Let me do most of the talking. Your mother gets confused easily, and we don't want her signing anything she doesn't understand." "But shouldn't she at least know what's happening?" "Of course she should know. But knowing and understanding are two different things. We'll explain everything to her afterward, when we have time to go through it slowly." Stuart knocked on my bedroom door, then entered with that careful, overly patient expression I'd grown to recognize. He moved his lips slowly and deliberately. "Time to go, Mom. Lawyer." I nodded and gathered my purse, inside which I'd hidden a small digital recorder, a gift from Harold last Christmas that I'd never had reason to use until now. I wanted every word of today's proceedings documented. The drive to Mr. Peterson's office was silent, except for the radio. I stared out the window, but I could hear Esme whispering instructions to Stuart. "Don't let her sign anything without reading it first, and if she seems confused, we'll ask for a break." At the law office, Mr. Peterson greeted us with the grave solemnity appropriate for the occasion. I'd known Bill Peterson for 20 years. He'd handled Harold's business affairs and our estate planning. He was a kind man, but I could see the pity in his eyes as he looked at me. "Mrs. Matthews," he said slowly, over-enunciating each word, "I'm so sorry for your loss." I nodded and smiled sadly. The picture of a grieving widow who couldn't hear his words but appreciated the gesture. We settled into the conference room, Stuart and Esme on either side of me. Mr. Peterson spread several documents across the mahogany table, his expression puzzled as he reviewed them. "This is unusual," he murmured to Stuart. "I have 2 different wills here from your father." Esme leaned forward. "2 wills? What do you mean?" "Well, there's the will we prepared last year, which I believe you're familiar with. But there's also this more recent document, dated 3 months ago, which your father filed directly with our office." My heart began to pound, but I kept my expression blank and confused. Stuart frowned. Dad never mentioned updating his will. "The more recent will supersedes the earlier version, of course," Mr. Peterson explained. "But I have to say, the provisions are quite different from what we originally discussed." Esme's voice grew sharp. "Different how?" Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and began to read. "I, Harold James Matthews, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and testaments." As he continued reading the opening paragraphs, I watched Esme's face. She was confident, almost smug, clearly expecting to hear Stuart's name as the primary beneficiary. Then Mr. Peterson reached the crucial section. I leave my entire estate, including my home at 1247 Elm Street, all bank accounts, investments, life insurance proceeds, and personal property, to my beloved wife, Blanche Eleanor Matthews. The silence in the room was deafening. Esme's mouth fell open. Stuart blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what he'd heard. There must be some mistake, Esme finally said. Harold told us. I mean, we understood that Stuart would inherit the house and primary assets. Mr. Peterson shook his head. The will is very clear, Mrs. Stuart Matthews. And there's more. He continued reading. I have observed that my wife remains mentally competent and fully capable of managing her own affairs, despite her hearing impairment. Any attempt to declare her incompetent or to place her in institutional care against her expressed wishes should be viewed as contrary to my intentions and potentially actionable. Esme's face had gone white. This is impossible. Harold knew Blanche couldn't handle financial responsibilities. She's deaf, for God's sake. She can barely function on her own. There's also a provision for your husband, Mr. Peterson told Esme, then read, To my son Stuart Matthews, I leave the sum of $50,000, contingent upon his respect for his mother's autonomy and his acceptance of her right to live independently. Should he challenge this will or attempt to have his mother declared incompetent, this bequest shall be reduced to $1, with the remainder of my estate going to St. Mary's Hospital Charity Fund. The room fell silent again. I could practically hear Esme's mind racing, trying to figure out how to salvage her plans. Stuart finally spoke. I don't understand. Dad never said anything about this to me. Your father came to our office privately 3 months ago, Mr. Peterson explained. He said he wanted to ensure your mother would be protected and have the means to live independently. He was very specific about the language regarding her competency. Esme's voice was strained. But she can't live alone. She's deaf. What if there's an emergency? What if she falls? What if someone tries to take advantage of her? Mr. Peterson looked at me with concern. Mrs. Matthews, do you understand what we've just read? Do you have any questions about your inheritance? I stared at him blankly, tilting my head as if trying to read his lips. Then I looked at Stuart with confusion, my performance picture perfect. Stuart sighed heavily. She doesn't understand, Mr. Peterson. She's been like this since Dad died, even more withdrawn than usual. Perhaps we should arrange for a competency evaluation, Esme suggested quickly, just to be safe. I'm sure Harold would have wanted safeguards in place. Mr. Peterson frowned. Mrs. Stuart Matthews, your father-in-law specifically included language to prevent such evaluations unless Mrs. Matthews herself requests one. He was very concerned about protecting her from external pressures. I watched Esme's jaw clench. Harold had outmaneuvered her completely, and she was beginning to realize it. What happens now? Stuart asked. Now Mrs. Matthews takes possession of her inheritance. The house is already in her name as joint property, so there's no transfer needed there. The financial accounts will need to be updated, but that's a straightforward process. Esme tried one more angle. Surely there's a waiting period, time for her to consider her options. There's no waiting period required, Mr. Peterson replied. Mrs. Matthews is the legal owner of these assets as of her husband's death. As we prepared to leave, Mr. Peterson handed me a folder containing copies of all the documents. Mrs. Matthews, he said gently, if you need any help understanding these papers or managing your affairs, please don't hesitate to call our office. I nodded and smiled, clutching the folder to my chest like a confused elderly woman who didn't understand its significance. The drive home was tense. I could feel the anger radiating from Esme, while Stuart seemed genuinely bewildered. I can't believe Dad did this without talking to us, Stuart said finally. Oh, he talked to us, Esme replied, her voice ice cold. He just didn't tell us the truth. The question is why. Maybe he was protecting Mom? Protecting her from what? From us? We're her family, Stuart. We want what's best for her. Maybe Dad didn't see it that way. Esme's laugh was bitter. Your father was a pharmacist, not a fortune teller. He couldn't have known how much worse her condition would get after his death. Look at her. She's completely disconnected from reality. I kept my gaze fixed on the passing scenery, but I could hear every word, could feel the tension building between them. "What do we do now?" Stuart asked. "We adapt," Esme said grimly. "We find another way to help her, because whether your father intended it or not, he's put her in a very vulnerable position. Someone needs to look out for her interests." Back at the house, they helped me inside and settled me in the living room. I sat quietly while they talked in the kitchen, their voices carrying clearly to where I sat. "This changes everything," Esme was saying. "She's sitting on $250,000 in assets, and she doesn't even understand what that means." "Maybe that's the point," Stuart replied. "Maybe Dad wanted her to be able to live comfortably without having to worry about money." "Stuart, your mother can't write a check without help. How is she supposed to manage property taxes, home maintenance, investment decisions? She'll be a target for every scam artist and predator in the state. So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we help her. Whether she inherited everything or not, she still needs family support. We move in here temporarily, help her adjust, make sure she's not taken advantage of." I felt a chill run down my spine. They couldn't control the inheritance, so now they wanted to control me directly. "Move in here?" Stuart sounded uncertain. "Just temporarily, until she gets her bearings. This house is huge. There's plenty of room. And think about it. If something happens to her, if she gets confused and signs something she shouldn't, or if someone convinces her to change her will, what then? At least if we're here, we can protect her." Protect me. The word tasted like poison in my mind. "I suppose it makes sense," Stuart said slowly. "She shouldn't be alone right now." "Exactly. And Stuart, your father may have left her the money, but he still left you $50,000. That's nothing to sneeze at. We can use that to help with her care, make some improvements to the house, maybe hire someone to help with the heavy work." I closed my eyes, understanding their new plan perfectly. They couldn't inherit my money, so they would position themselves as my caretakers and protectors. They would move into my house, spend my inheritance on improvements for my benefit, and slowly take control of every aspect of my life. And because I was supposedly deaf and increasingly confused, no one would question their authority to make decisions for me. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had no idea I could hear every word they said. By Friday, Esme had orchestrated their move into my house with military precision. I watched from my bedroom window as Stuart carried boxes and suitcases from their car, his movements hesitant and uncomfortable. Esme, however, directed the operation like a general claiming conquered territory. "Put our things in the master bedroom," I heard her tell Stuart. "Your mother can move to the smaller room down the hall. It'll be easier for her. Less space to get confused in." My master bedroom. The room I'd shared with Harold for over 40 years, where I'd nursed him through his final illness, where his scent still lingered on the pillows. I came downstairs as they were rearranging furniture, moving my personal items out of what Esme apparently considered their space now. "Oh, Blanche!" Esme greeted me with false brightness, speaking slowly and loudly as if volume could penetrate my supposed deafness. "We're just getting settled. Stuart and I are going to stay here for a while to help you adjust." I stared at her blankly, then looked around at the boxes and displaced furniture with apparent confusion. Stuart approached me with obvious guilt written across his face. "Mom, we thought. With Dad gone. You shouldn't be alone right now." I nodded slowly, playing the part of the grateful but bewildered widow. Inside, I was documenting every presumption, every invasion of my space. "Now, we've moved you to the blue bedroom," Esme continued, gesturing down the hall. "It's much cozier, and you'll have everything you need. We'll be right across the hall if you need anything during the night." The blue bedroom had been Harold's study. They'd cleared out his books, his desk, his 40 years of memories, and installed a twin bed and a small dresser. Everything about it screamed, elderly relative's room, functional, temporary, diminished. Over the next few days, I watched Esme systematically take control of my house. She rearranged the kitchen to suit her preferences, moved my photographs to less prominent locations, and replaced Harold's comfortable old furniture with pieces from their apartment. "It's good for her to have some changes," I heard her tell Stuart. "Clinging to the past isn't healthy. She needs to start fresh." She also began intercepting my mail, sorting through it at the kitchen table each morning while I sat nearby, pretending to read the newspaper. "Bills, bills, more bills," she would mutter. "Blanche, you really need help managing all this. Look at this electric bill, it's enormous, and the property taxes are due next month. How are you planning to handle all this?" I would look up from my paper with a confused expression, and Esme would pat my hand condescendingly. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Stuart and I will take care of everything. You just focus on feeling better." But it was the phone calls that revealed the true scope of their plan. The first one came Tuesday morning while I was in the garden, supposedly tending to Harold's roses, but actually listening through the open kitchen window. "Yes, this is Esme Matthews, calling about my mother-in-law, Blanche Matthews," she said in her most professional voice. "She recently inherited a substantial estate, but I'm concerned about her ability to manage her affairs. She's deaf and showing signs of confusion since her husband's death." I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Esme's responses painted a clear picture. "No, she hasn't been formally evaluated, but it's becoming obvious that she needs assistance. She can't handle her own correspondence, doesn't understand financial documents. Yes, I understand you can't discuss specifics, but I'm wondering what options exist for family members who need to step in." She was calling banks, lawyers, financial advisors, anyone who might have access to information about my accounts. She was fishing for ways to gain control over my inheritance. The second call came that afternoon, while Stuart was at work and I was supposedly napping. "Dr. Hendricks, this is Esme Matthews. My mother-in-law is one of your patients, Blanche Matthews?" "Yes, that's right. I'm calling because we're very concerned about her mental state since her husband passed away." I crept closer to the kitchen, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. "She's become increasingly withdrawn and confused. She doesn't respond appropriately to conversations, seems to forget things immediately, and yesterday I found her standing in her nightgown at 3 in the morning, completely disoriented." That was a complete lie. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom and had heard them talking in the bedroom they'd claimed as their own. "I'm wondering if you could recommend someone for a cognitive evaluation. Nothing formal. Just someone who could assess whether she's capable of living independently and making financial decisions." Dr. Hendricks must have asked about my hearing, because Esme's voice grew more urgent. "The deafness is definitely part of the problem, but it's more than that. She seems to be losing touch with reality. I'm worried she could be taken advantage of, or worse, hurt herself." After she hung up, I retreated to my small bedroom, my heart pounding with rage. Esme was methodically building a case for my incompetency, laying the groundwork to have me declared unfit to manage my own affairs. But the worst came Wednesday evening, during a call I overheard her making from the master bedroom. "Margaret, it's Esme. Yes, we're settled in now. No, it's harder than I expected. She's really deteriorating rapidly. Stuart's in denial about it, but I can see the signs." I pressed my ear against the wall, grateful for the old house's thin construction. "Money? Oh, there's plenty of money. More than Harold ever let on. The house alone is worth at least $200,000, and that's not counting the life insurance and savings." I know, right? All these years, we thought Stuart's inheritance would be modest. Margaret's response must have been encouraging, because Esme laughed. "Well, obviously we can't just take it, but if she's declared incompetent, Stuart would become her guardian. Then we could make decisions in her best interest. Sell this big house, put her somewhere safe, invest the money properly." My hands clenched into fists. The timing is actually perfect. We've been trying to have a baby for 2 years, and the fertility treatments are expensive. Plus, with Stuart's promotion coming up, we could really use a larger down payment for our own house. She was planning to use my inheritance to fund their fertility treatments and buy themselves a house, all under the guise of acting in my best interest. No, she won't fight it. How could she? She can't even hear what we're saying about her. And Stuart feels so guilty about his father's death that he'll do anything to make sure she's taken care of. He actually thinks we're being noble. Thursday morning brought a new development. I was in the kitchen, slowly eating breakfast and pretending to struggle with simple tasks, when Esme emerged from her phone call with obvious excitement. "Great news, Blanche," she announced. "I've arranged for a nice woman to come visit you today, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's a geriatric specialist who helps families navigate difficult transitions." A geriatric specialist. The cognitive evaluation was moving forward. "She just wants to chat with you, make sure you're adjusting well to your new circumstances. Nothing stressful or complicated." Stuart looked uncomfortable. "Don't you think we should wait a bit longer? It's only been a week since the funeral." "Waiting won't help anything," Esme replied firmly. "Dr. Chen says the sooner we establish a baseline, the better we can track any changes in her condition." "But what if Mom doesn't want to be evaluated?" Esme's smile was cold. "Stuart, look at her. She doesn't understand what an evaluation is. We're her family. It's our responsibility to make sure she gets proper care." I continued eating my toast, chewing slowly and staring at the table as if I couldn't hear their conversation about my future. But inside, I was calculating. Dr. Chen would arrive this afternoon. She would ask me questions, observe my responses, and write a report that Esme would use to justify taking control of my life. Unless I was ready for her, I excused myself and went to my small bedroom, where I retrieved the digital recorder from my purse. For the past week, I'd been documenting every conversation, every lie, every manipulation. I had hours of recordings proving that Esme was deliberately misrepresenting my condition and plotting to steal my inheritance. But more importantly, I had the real will, safely locked away in Harold's old safe. The will that not only left everything to me, but specifically warned against exactly what Esme was trying to do. I also had something else, something I'd discovered while going through Harold's papers after the funeral. A letter addressed to me, sealed and marked, to be opened only if Blanche feels threatened or pressured by family members after my death. I'd been saving it, hoping I would never need it, but today seemed like the right time. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded Harold's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Blanche, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I pray I'm wrong, but I suspect that Esme will try to take advantage of your situation after I'm gone. She's been too interested in our finances, too eager to discuss what will happen to you if something happens to me. I've seen the way she looks at this house, heard her comments about your limitations. I want you to know, you are not limited. You are not helpless. You are the strongest woman I've ever known, and you deserve to live your remaining years with dignity and independence. If anyone tries to force you into care you don't want, or tries to take control of the inheritance I've left you, fight them. The will protects you legally, but you must protect yourself personally. Don't let them convince you that you're incapable. Don't let them steal the life we built together. You have more strength than they realize. Use it. All my love, Harold." I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Harold had known. He'd seen through Esme's manipulation and had tried to protect me the only way he could. Now it was time to protect myself. Dr. Chen was due to arrive at 2 o'clock. That gave me 4 hours to prepare for the performance of my life. Not the performance of a confused, helpless woman, but the performance of someone ready to take back control of her own story. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived promptly at 2 o'clock, a petite woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. I watched from my bedroom window as Esme greeted her at the front door, playing the role of the concerned daughter-in-law to perfection. "Dr. Chen, thank you so much for coming. I'm Esme Matthews. We spoke on the phone. This is such a difficult time for all of us." I made my way downstairs slowly, deliberately appearing frail and uncertain. Esme immediately rushed to my side, her hand on my arm in a gesture that looked protective but felt controlling. "Blanche, this is Dr. Chen. She's here to visit with you for a little while." Dr. Chen smiled warmly and spoke clearly, making eye contact with me. "Hello, Mrs. Matthews. I'm so sorry for the loss of your husband. I know this must be a very difficult time." I stared at her blankly, tilting my head as if straining to understand. Esme jumped in immediately. She's been having trouble since Harold passed. Much more withdrawn than usual, and she seems confused about daily routines. Yesterday, I found her trying to set the table for 2 people. That was another lie. I had indeed set 2 places out of habit, then caught myself and removed Harold's setting. It was a normal part of grief, not evidence of cognitive decline. "Why don't we sit down and chat?" Dr. Chen suggested, settling into Harold's old armchair. Esme positioned herself on the couch where she could see both of us, clearly intending to monitor every word. "Mrs. Matthews, can you tell me what day it is today?" I looked confused and glanced toward Esme, who immediately answered for me. "She's lost track of time since the funeral. I have to remind her to eat most days." Dr. Chen made a note, then tried again. "Mrs. Matthews, can you tell me your full name?" Again, I appeared confused. Again, Esme intervened. "Blanche Eleanor Matthews. But she doesn't always respond when you say her name anymore." This continued for several minutes, Dr. Chen asking simple questions, me appearing bewildered, and Esme providing explanations that painted me as increasingly incompetent. I could see Dr. Chen growing concerned, not just about my supposed condition, but about the family dynamic she was observing. "Mrs. Matthews," Dr. Chen said gently, "would it be possible for us to speak privately for a few minutes?" Esme stiffened. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary. Blanche gets anxious when left alone with strangers. I should stay to help interpret if she doesn't understand something. I appreciate your concern, Dr. Chen replied diplomatically. "But it's standard practice for me to spend at least a few minutes alone with my patients." "But she can't hear you properly. How will you communicate?" "I have experience working with hearing-impaired patients. We'll manage." Reluctantly, Esme left the room, but I could hear her hovering just outside the door. Dr. Chen waited a moment, then leaned forward and spoke quietly. "Mrs. Matthews, I want you to know that anything you say to me is confidential. Your daughter-in-law seems very concerned about you, but I'd like to hear from you directly. How are you feeling?" I maintained my confused expression, but something in Dr. Chen's eyes made me pause. There was intelligence there, and perhaps suspicion about what she'd just witnessed. She tried a different approach. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to nod if you understand, even if you can't hear me perfectly. Do you know where you are right now?" I nodded slowly. "Do you know what month it is?" Another nod. "Are you comfortable with your current living situation?" I hesitated, then slowly shook my head. Dr. Chen made several notes, then did something unexpected. She pulled out her phone and opened the note-taking app, typing a message and showing me the screen. "Are you afraid of your daughter-in-law?" My heart raced. This woman was sharper than Esme had anticipated. I looked toward the door, then back at the phone, and nodded slightly. Dr. Chen typed another message. "Do you feel pressured to appear more confused than you actually are?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. This was it. The moment I had to decide whether to continue my charade or trust this stranger with the truth. Harold's letter echoed in my mind. "You have more strength than they realize. Use it." I nodded again, more firmly this time. Dr. Chen's expression shifted to one of understanding and concern. She typed rapidly, "I need to complete this evaluation as your family requested, but I want you to know that you have rights. No one can force you into care you don't want. Do you understand?" I nodded, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. When Esme returned to the room, Dr. Chen's demeanor was professional but notably cooler. "I think I have what I need for now. Mrs. Matthews, thank you for your time." "So?" Esme asked eagerly. "What's your assessment? Should we be looking into care facilities?" "I'll need to review my notes and prepare a formal report," Dr. Chen replied carefully. "These things take time. But surely you can give us some preliminary thoughts. We're very concerned about her safety." Dr. Chen stood, gathering her papers. "Mrs. Matthews, I'll be in touch soon. In the meantime, I want you to know that there are resources available if you need them." After Dr. Chen left, Esme was clearly frustrated by the lack of immediate validation for her plans. She seemed very cautious, she complained to Stuart when he came home from work. "Maybe that's a good thing," Stuart replied. "Maybe we're rushing this. Stuart, your mother could hurt herself. What if she falls down the stairs? What if she forgets to turn off the stove?" We can't watch her 24 hours a day. That evening, as they discussed my future in their bedroom, I made a decision. I couldn't wait for Dr. Chen's report, or hope that Stuart would find the courage to stand up to his wife. It was time to take control of my own situation. The next morning, I waited until Esme left for her yoga class and Stuart departed for work. Then I called a taxi and asked the driver to take me to Peterson and Associates. Mr. Peterson was surprised to see me alone. "Mrs. Matthews, is everything all right? Where are Stuart and Esme?" I sat down across from his desk and, for the first time in weeks, spoke in my normal voice. "Mr. Peterson, I need your help. And I need you to know that I can hear perfectly well." His eyes widened in shock. "You can hear? But your family said." "My family doesn't know that my hearing was restored before Harold died. They've been planning my future based on assumptions that are no longer true, and those plans don't include my consent or my best interests." I explained everything. The surgery, Harold's secret will, Esme's manipulation, the forced move into my house, the attempts to have me declared incompetent. Mr. Peterson listened with growing alarm. "Mrs. Matthews, if what you're telling me is true, this could constitute elder abuse and financial exploitation." "It is true, and I have recordings to prove it." I pulled out my digital recorder and played several key conversations, watching Mr. Peterson's expression grow more serious with each revelation. "What do you want to do?" he asked when I finished. "I want them out of my house. I want to reclaim my independence, and I want to make sure this never happens again." "That's certainly your right. But Mrs. Matthews, are you prepared for the confrontation this will cause? Your son may not take this well." I thought about Stuart, my boy who had grown into a man too weak to stand up to his manipulative wife, too guilty about his father's death to see clearly. It broke my heart, but I couldn't sacrifice my freedom to protect his feelings. "I've been preparing for this confrontation for a week," I told Mr. Peterson. "I'm ready." We spent the next 2 hours planning my strategy. Mr. Peterson would prepare documentation affirming my competency and my right to control my own affairs. He would also draft a formal notice requiring Esme and Stuart to vacate my property within 30 days. If they refused, we would pursue legal remedies for trespassing and attempted exploitation. By the time I returned home, I felt stronger than I had since Harold's death. The taxi dropped me off just as Esme was returning from her yoga class. "Blanche, where have you been? I was worried sick when I couldn't find you." I stared at her blankly and shrugged, playing my role one last time. "You can't just wander off like that. What if something had happened to you? What if you'd gotten lost?" I continued my silent act as she escorted me inside, her grip on my arm tighter than necessary, but I could hear the anxiety in her voice. She suspected something had changed, even if she couldn't pinpoint what. That evening, Dr. Chen called. I answered the phone in the kitchen while Esme was upstairs. "Mrs. Matthews, this is Dr. Chen. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday." "Yes?" I said quietly, glancing toward the stairs. "I've completed my evaluation, and I want you to know that I found no evidence of cognitive impairment or incompetency. In fact, I have serious concerns about the pressure being placed on you by your family members." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. Mrs. Matthews, I'm required to report my findings to the party who requested the evaluation, but I also want you to know that I've documented my concerns about potential elder abuse. If you need assistance or feel unsafe, please don't hesitate to call me." After I hung up, I heard Esme coming down the stairs. She found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the phone with apparent confusion. "Who was that, Blanche?" I shrugged and shook my head as if I didn't understand the question. But tomorrow, when Stuart came home from work, I would be ready to end this charade once and for all. Tomorrow, they would learn that the helpless, deaf widow they thought they could manipulate had been listening to every word, planning every move, and preparing to reclaim her life. Tomorrow, the performance would be over, and the real Blanche Matthews would finally step forward. Friday evening, I sat in the living room, my living room, waiting for Stuart to come home from work. Esme was in the kitchen, preparing dinner and speaking on the phone with someone about care options for me. She had no idea that this would be her last night in my house. At 6:15, I heard Stuart's car in the driveway. By the time he walked through the front door, I had positioned myself in Harold's old armchair, the digital recorder hidden in my lap, and every document I needed spread across the coffee table in front of me. "Hi, Mom," Stuart said, bending to kiss my forehead as he had every evening since moving in. "How was your day?" I looked up at him with clear, focused eyes and spoke in my normal voice. "It was very enlightening, Stuart. We need to talk." He froze, his expression shifting from casual concern to shock. "Mom, can you hear me?" "I can hear you perfectly. I've been able to hear everything for months." Esme's voice carried from the kitchen. "Stuart, is everything okay in there?" I raised my voice slightly. "Esme, please join us. This conversation involves both of you." The sound of shattering dishes came from the kitchen, followed by rapid footsteps. Esme appeared in the doorway, her face pale with disbelief. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You're deaf. You've been deaf for 5 years." "I was deaf," I corrected, standing up with more strength and dignity than I'd shown in weeks. "I had surgery 3 months ago that restored my hearing." Harold and I decided not to share that information immediately. As it turns out, that was the wisest decision we ever made. Stuart sank onto the couch, his mind clearly racing. "But you, all this time you've been acting like I couldn't hear you planning my future without my consent? Like I couldn't hear Esme calling me confused and incompetent? Like I couldn't hear your discussions about selling my house and institutionalizing me?" Esme's shock was rapidly transforming into anger. "You've been lying to us. Do you have any idea what we've been through? Worrying about you? Trying to take care of you?" I picked up the digital recorder and held it where they could both see it. "Would you like to hear exactly what kind of care you've been planning for me?" I pressed play, and Esme's voice filled the room. "Thank God this is finally over. Stuart's been worried sick about what to do with her. She can't live alone, obviously, and Harold spoiled her rotten." Stuart's face went white as he heard his wife's words from the day of the funeral. I fast-forwarded to another conversation. "The timing is actually perfect. We've been trying to have a baby for 2 years, and the fertility treatments are expensive. Plus, with Stuart's promotion coming up, we could really use a larger down payment for our own house." "Esme," Stuart said quietly. "What is she talking about?" But I wasn't finished. I played the recording of Esme lying to Dr. Hendricks about my mental state, her conversation with Margaret about my money, her plans to have me declared incompetent. With each revelation, Stuart seemed to shrink further into himself, while Esme's facade of concerned family member crumbled completely. "This is taken out of context," Esme said desperately. "I was upset. I was grieving too. I said things I didn't mean." "Really?" I walked to the coffee table and picked up a thick folder. Because Dr. Chen's evaluation tells a different story. She found me completely competent and noted serious concerns about family pressure and potential elder abuse. I opened the folder and read from Dr. Chen's report. "Mrs. Matthews shows no signs of cognitive impairment or diminished capacity. However, I observed troubling family dynamics, including interruption of patient responses, speaking for the patient without consent, and apparent coaching of patient behavior. I recommend immediate intervention if family members continue attempting to override patient autonomy." Stuart looked at his wife with dawning horror. "Esme, is this true? Have you been lying about Mom's condition?" "Stuart, you've seen how she's been acting, confused, withdrawn." "Because I was grieving," I interrupted. "Because I lost my husband of 42 years. But that doesn't make me incompetent, and it certainly doesn't give you the right to steal my inheritance and plan my life without my consent." I pulled out Harold's will and placed it on the table. "This is why Harold left everything to me, Stuart. Not because he didn't love you, but because he saw what was happening. He knew Esme was already planning for his death, already calculating the value of our assets." Stuart picked up the will with trembling hands, reading the section about protecting me from family pressure and potential exploitation. "Dad knew?" he whispered. "Your father was a wise man. He saw through Esme's manipulation even when you couldn't. Esme's composure finally snapped completely. This is ridiculous. Stuart, she's been lying to us for weeks. How can you trust anything she says? Because, Stuart said slowly, everything she's saying makes sense. The way you pushed for the evaluation, the way you insisted we move in here, the way you've been making all these plans. He looked at his wife as if seeing her clearly for the first time. My God, Esme, what have you done? I've been trying to protect her. Someone had to think practically about her future. By lying about her mental state, by planning to steal her inheritance. It's not stealing if it's in her best interest. I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. That's not your decision to make, Esme. It never was. I walked to the front closet and retrieved 2 suitcases, the ones they'd brought when they moved in just 1 week ago. I want you both out of my house tonight. Stuart's face crumpled. Mom, please. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Stuart. You chose to support your wife's lies and manipulation instead of defending your mother. You moved into my house, took over my bedroom, and planned my institutionalization without ever once asking what I wanted. But we thought we were helping. No, you thought you were inheriting my money. When that didn't work out, you decided to control me instead. I handed the suitcases to Stuart. You have 1 hour to pack your belongings and leave. If you're not gone by 8 o'clock, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Esme found her voice again. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go. You have your apartment. You have your jobs. You have the $50,000 Harold left Stuart, assuming he doesn't contest the will and lose even that. This is insane, Esme shouted. Stuart, are you going to let her throw us out like this? Stuart looked between his wife and his mother, his face torn with conflict. Esme, maybe we should go. Maybe Mom needs some space. Space? Stuart, she's been lying to us. She's been recording our private conversations. This is vindictive and cruel. I felt a moment of sadness for my son, caught between his manipulative wife and the reality of what they'd tried to do to me. But my sympathy only went so far. Stuart, I said gently, you're my son, and I love you. But I won't be controlled or exploited, even by family, especially by family. He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I thought we were doing the right thing. I know you did. That's what makes this so sad. It took them 45 minutes to pack their belongings. I watched from the living room as they carried boxes and suitcases to their car. Esme's face twisted with rage while Stuart moved like a man in a daze. Before they left, Stuart came back inside one last time. Mom, can we talk sometime? When things calm down? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved, who had been so easily manipulated into betraying me, and felt a complex mix of love, disappointment, and hope. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what happened here, and when you're ready to accept that I'm a competent adult who deserves respect, then yes, we can talk. He nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. I really am sorry. I know you are, Stuart. The question is whether you're sorry enough to change. After they left, I walked through my house, truly my house again, reclaiming each room. I moved my belongings back into the master bedroom, returned Harold's photographs to their proper places, and restored the furniture to where it belonged. In Harold's study, I found the letter he'd left for me and read it again. You have more strength than they realize. Use it. I had used it. I had protected myself, reclaimed my independence, and refused to be victimized by the people who should have protected me. The next morning, I called Mr. Peterson to let him know the situation was resolved. Then I called Dr. Chen to thank her for her support and professional integrity. But the most important call I made was to my sister Rose in California, a relationship I'd let lapse over the years because Esme had always found reasons why we were too busy for family visits. Blanche? Rose's voice was filled with warmth and surprise. I was so sorry to hear about Harold. How are you holding up? I'm doing better than anyone expected, I told her. In fact, I was wondering if you'd like a visitor. I have some traveling to catch up on. 3 months later, I'm writing this from Rose's porch in San Diego, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. I sold the big house in Sacramento. Too many memories. and I wanted something smaller and more manageable. I bought a lovely little cottage near Rose, close enough for family dinners but far enough for independence. Stuart calls occasionally. We're working on rebuilding our relationship, but it's slow going. He's filed for divorce from Esme, who, it turns out, had been planning to leave him anyway once she gained control of my inheritance. Some lessons are more expensive than others. I've used part of Harold's inheritance to travel, something we always planned to do but kept postponing. I've seen the Grand Canyon, visited old friends, and rediscovered parts of myself that had been buried under years of caregiving and loss. But mostly, I've learned something important. Being alone isn't the same as being lonely. After 5 years of silence and weeks of pretending to be helpless, I've found my voice again. And I'm not afraid to use it. The hearing aids I wear now are nearly invisible, and my independence is absolute. I volunteer at a local center for seniors, helping others navigate the challenges of aging with dignity. I've made new friends, pursued old hobbies, and discovered that life at 67 can still hold surprises. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing my family's betrayal so dramatically. The answer is simple. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret protecting myself. Harold was right. I had more strength than they realized. More than I realized, actually. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to use that strength, even when it means standing completely alone. Especially then. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.